Hello everyone and welcome back to round number 3 of my return to Over the Board Chess in the Eastleigh Chess Congress. Last round I'd made a draw with a 2277 and in this round it was no different. I'm playing a 2153 who has recently gained a lot of points and is actually all the way up to 2250 nowadays, so definitely a strong player. Now this is the third round of the day, which means that I've played 3 classical games in one day, which sums up to a total playtime right around 8 hours. So I was feeling pretty tired during this game. So I'm just going to flip the board because I had the black pieces for the first time. Both of the previous times I had the white pieces, but my opponent started with pawn to d4. I'd done a little bit of preparation for pawn to d4. I checked the pairings about 10 minutes before the round started and had done a little bit of prep, so I was expecting this variation with pawn to f3 going for e4 in the center against my King's Indian defense. So went for the King's Indian, he went for e4, played d6, knight c3, all normal stuff. White's just developing their pieces and taking the center, and I'm saying I'll strike back at your center a little bit later and maybe try and start fighting on the flank so that I can open up my dark squared bishop and get counterplay on the queen side. So he continues with bishop to g5. This move potentially does some pressure on my knight, but really he's just going to play something with queen d2, maybe trade it off. And I responded with pawn to a6. Now, this move looks pretty weird if you don't know the purpose, but the point is that I'm staying flexible with my potential knight development, and I'm also preparing the move pawn to b5 in the future. So he continues with queen d2. I play knight d7, looking to play my pawn up to c5, and with a little bit of support, potentially also pawn to e5. He goes knight to h3, aiming for the knight going to f2. The reason he doesn't put the knight on e2 is because then I can immediately play c5, b5, and, sorry, not here, but queen to a5. And this is slightly worse because the bishop isn't supporting the pawn. So he was clearly aware of that and instead went for the move knight to h3, which is still the theory move. And I played c5, d5, b5 as planned. This is now a pawn sacrifice, a little bit like the Benko Gambit, if any of you are familiar with that. This is kind of an improved Benko Gambit because white's committed all of their pawns to this light square pawn chain. Which means the bishop isn't doing as well as it would be on square like e2 potentially. And also this pawn to f3 means that knight to f3 can't be played, and so their knight is a little bit on the rim and looking a tiny bit strange. So it's like a little bit of an improved Benko Gambit, this kind of position. And given that I was a Benko player in the past, I was pretty happy with this. So cb5 and queen to a5. We're obviously not recapturing right now, because that would just let them develop a piece with a tempo, which wouldn't be so good, although apparently this position is still fairly playable, just like this. But instead, yeah, I went for queen a5, and this is where my opening knowledge pretty much ended. I knew that I was meant to play queen to a5 here, then I could like either take it, play bishop to a6 in the future. That was really about it. And after knight to f2, I was really happy to come up with this move, knight to b6, which I didn't have in my preparation, but it was really the only move that seems logical, and weirdly enough, it puts white into a little bit of a zugzwang. So after knight to b6, it's hard to make an improving move here, because if you move the bishop on any of these squares, obviously not this one, but if you move the bishop out, then I'm going to capture, and then if you take with the bishop, then you've wasted a tempo moving the same piece multiple times, which is obviously not beneficial. And alternatively, if you want to try and say improve the positioning of your knight, well then that will just drop the pawn for free. So it's not so easy. It's not so easy for white to continue with their plan of castling kingside without moving the bishop and wasting a tempo. And if you want to castle long, well then you're just castling into the fire, which seems completely insane. Like, look at this. Takes, and already all of these lines have opened up. I mean, black could play something like bishop d7, and after captures, they can capture here, maybe sacrifice this pawn. You could consider knight to c4, attacking the queen and this pawn like this. And already, maybe you can even play knight to b2. King takes on b2, rook b8, and the king seems like it's getting swarmed here. Not 100% sure about this one. Yeah, maybe knight can go to e5 here. And let's say queen goes to e2. And maybe even there's some queen sacrifices. Maybe there's some queen sacrifice there, but yeah, even just queen a3 probably wins the game with the rook to b2 infiltration. I mean, I'm not 100% sure about this. Yeah, it's probably completely winning. Engine gives this -4. I was just playing some random moves either side, but clearly, castling queenside is not the way to go, given as these two files would open up immediately. So after knight b6, he eventually settled on pawn to a4, which we talked about after the game. He wasn't very happy about playing this move, and I do agree with him because this doesn't really protect the pawn very well. Because after I capture here and the bishop takes, I go bishop a6, and if you want to castle, well, then I can capture it, and I can get 2 rooks for the queen. So we'll take a look at that in a second, because that's how the game went. But if you went for something like bishop to a6, queen a6, then all of a sudden you can't castle your king. And if you want to play knight to d3, then I can play knight to c4. The queen has to move, and I can play like rook to b8. And if you play b3, then this diagonal's looking extremely vulnerable. Maybe I can even play some sacrifices, although I'm not too sure about that just yet. Probably just knight to a5, pressuring the pawn, c4's coming, and this position looks pretty bad for white once again. Yeah, -1.6 according to the engine. So he did, in fact, end up castling, which is really the only way that you can play this position. But after I captured the bishop and went for the 2 rooks position, I was feeling quite good. He offered me a draw. Actually, he offered me a draw right after castling, which clearly indicates to me that he's being the higher rated player. Higher rated players only really offer the draw when they're feeling the heat and they're getting a little bit nervous. So of course I declined and I decided to play on. So we traded off the queen for the rooks, and I played this move knight c4, which I've annotated with an inaccuracy. The engine thinks it's the best move, which is pretty funny to me, because I only played this move because I simply missed queen e2. I mean, it's sloppy from me, but I was tired and it was a long day. I really should have seen queen e2. I looked at queen c2 and I was like, okay, wait, not that move, sorry. I looked at queen c2 and I saw h6, bishop h4, knight to e3, and I thought this looked amazing for black. I also looked at queen d3 and saw knight b2, so I was like, okay, black's just winning here as well because there's this pin. And the other queen moves just seemed obviously bad, like queen going out here, there's knight to h5, bishop comes in, and then knight b2, and all of this stuff, and I mean, white's just completely losing here. So I was like, okay, knight c4, I think I just won, right? But I'd also taken a look at h6, which was my other plan, and while the engine doesn't think h6 is so good, we both thought after the game that h6 was an extremely strong move. Because the point of h6, it just looks like a pawn blunder, but the idea is that after you take it, now we go knight to c4, and on something like queen g5, then we just have knight to h7, and after the queen moves somewhere, then we can capture this knight here, removing the defense of the other knight, and black is just winning another piece here and should win the game. But the main problem with this knight c4 move is that white can just go queen to e2, which is something that both of us had actually missed during the game. And the point is that on bishop h6, then you just take the knight. And now, I don't know, like black's just lost a pawn for no real good reason. And yeah, that's definitely not the way to go. Anyway, after knight c4, we're now completely out of the master games and on our own territory. He played queen e2 anyway, and I just moved back. So this wasn't a draw offer, by the way. If he went back to d2, I was going to play h6, which was once again not a good move, but both of us thought it was good. But he thought, just like me, that knight c4, knight b6 was a huge waste of time and decided to play on the position with king to f2. Now, I have got a big time advantage at this point. He's only got 9 minutes. I have about 31. So I was actually starting to feel good as well. So I was like, okay, thanks. You want to play on the position? Let's play on the position. So I play h6, kick the bishop back, and then rook to b8, trying to attack this pawn like so. Moves like knight to a4, trying to remove the defender and then capture it were on my mind. He went knight to e3, I played knight f to d7, unleashing the bishop and trying to get it into the game as well, and saying that, okay, if I want to trade off this knight's probably better on b6 and c4 as well, rather than on this f6 square where it's not really doing anything. So his knight went back to c2, I retreated my rook, then tried to exchange off the piece, which I managed to do. He was getting super low on time at this point. I'd burned a fair bit of time as well, and he plays bishop to c3. I went bishop to d4, which is a nice collinear move. These ones are always really satisfying to play, although I don't think it was necessarily the best move. I think the engine likes him capturing it, but it's quite hard to evaluate that, especially with the rook taking and then just going back. It looks like this pawn's dropping off. But apparently it was the best move. I was hoping for him to play something like b3, I think, because then that would open up the second rank, and I could try and retreat my rooks back and then recuperate this position and go for an attack on his king. So I was hoping for b3, but it didn't happen. Instead, he played king g3, escaping the pin so that the knight can now move again. So I went back and gave a check. If he went here, I have now improved my bishop, so I could play on the position a different way, or I could consider repeating at this point as well. So he did end up taking. He decided not to go for the draw, which is an interesting decision. I wasn't really going to go for it anyway. I was just improving the position of the bishop, because with it on g7, if I were to potentially move my knight, there would be instances where he could take it, and then my king would be vulnerable on a diagonal. So that was part of the reason why I wasn't going for the bishop being there. But he ended up took back with the knight, and he played this move f4, which is really the only move, I think, to stay in the game. Because if he doesn't play f4, then I'm just going to go rook to b4, take this pawn, take that pawn, and then I'm going to win pretty much instantly. So he had to play f4, kick my knight back, and then play this nice move, knight to d1. Once again, the only move found by him. Honestly, I think it deserves an exclamation mark, but it is kind of obvious because it's the only move, and when you're getting desperate, you generally tend to find the correct moves in the position. So rook goes to b4, he brings his knight out, and then I go for knight to b6. Now my point here is that I want to play knight to a4 or knight to c4, and according to the engine, my position's already slipped quite a bit, and white's better with the move pawn to e5. And after my move knight to c4, which defends this pawn here and activates my knight, also pressures this guy, apparently he has the move pawn to h4, which is the only winning move for white, which is very, very weird. I guess the point is that the king can potentially run away, and it gives king h2 capture. Oh no, you got to capture with the knight, and then takes this way and tries to invade with their own knight. I guess the point is now that the king is safe, hiding behind this pawn, whereas previously, if the king was like this, and let's say that white played some random bad move, I don't really know, to be honest, then I could go for this, and this is no longer as good going for here because now I have rook to b3, although in this situation he does have g3. But that was basically the whole point of h3 or h4. Neither of us was seeing that in the time trouble, so instead of that he went for f5, which does give the game a little bit back to black. It's now like minus 0.5, but he offered me a draw here, and I did end up accepting. I was finding it very, very hard to accurately calculate things in this position. I also thought the e5 on the previous move was strong for him, and I was getting a little bit nervous. So yeah, I did end up taking the draw here. The line that I'd taken a look at and scared me in this position was knight to c4. I think it was like, yeah, captures, queen g4, knight e5, queen e6, king f8, and yeah, I didn't see king f8, to be honest with you. I thought I was just starting to drop pawns, but even on king f8, it's still concerning with ideas like knight to e2, takes it here, rook to b3, king f2, and like the knight's coming into the game here, and if that happens, then my king's very exposed with the queen around it. I mean, I probably should have played this position. Yeah, I mean, I definitely should have gone for this, taking the pawn like here, probably with the other rook, and the two rooks. Even if he can get some perpetual, that seems like that's the best that white can do, like this, for example. All that white can really hope for is a perpetual, but at the same time, I was just feeling foggy. It was a long, long day, 8 hours of chess before. I was really struggling to calculate things accurately, and decided to go for the draw. Because, yeah, I was basically just repeating these lines in my head, not getting further than 2 or 3 moves without losing focus. And especially because he'd offered the draw, it makes it even harder to focus because you're like, I've already got this thing in my pocket, and I can just end the day on a good day, 2 out of 3, 2 draws, 1 win against a FIDE master, and ultimately, yeah, I wasn't playing as objectively as maybe I could be. But what to do? We are all human at the end of the day, and that's definitely something that I can work on for next time. So yeah, Hope you enjoyed this video, found this tournament interesting so far. 2 more rounds to go. Let's see what happens. If you're interested in coaching from me, please check out the description, send me an email. And other than that, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.